Marcus Rivera's hands trembled with rage as he slammed the job offer onto the CEO's immaculate desk. The words, "I can't accept your charity," burning in his throat. Katherine Langford's unexpected response shattered 23 years of invisible existence, forever changing the boundaries between power and pride. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The first time Marcus Rivera noticed Katherine Langford was on a Tuesday evening in November. The Langford Industries tower emptied out around 7, but the executive floor blazed with light until much later. Marcus pushed his cleaning cart out of the service elevator, the familiar weight of exhaustion settling into his bones as he began his nightly ritual on the 52nd floor. 23 years of the same routine had worn grooves in his movement, made his body economical and precise. He was emptying the wastepaper basket in conference room C when he heard it. A voice, quiet but clear, coming from the CEO's office at the end of the hall. Marcus hesitated, his hand hovering over the trash can. The cleaning staff was under strict instructions to never enter occupied offices. Wait until the executives leave, then clean. That was the rule. But something in that voice made him pause. It wasn't the authoritative tone he'd overheard countless times when Katherine Langford was speaking to her team. This voice was softer, almost fragile, vulnerable. "I understand, Doctor. Yes. I'll consider the options." Marcus backed away from the doorway, feeling suddenly like an intruder. He should move on, continue his rounds on another floor, and come back later. But before he could retreat, he heard a sound that stopped him cold, a quiet sob quickly stifled. The world's youngest female CEO of a Fortune 500 company was crying in her office alone at 10:43 p.m. Marcus stood frozen, his cleaning cart forgotten. In 23 years, he had perfected the art of invisibility. Executives walked past him as if he were part of the furniture. He moved through the gleaming halls of power unnoticed, uncounted among the ranks of the important. He had learned to disappear, to become as inconsequential as the dust he removed. But in that moment, something older than his training as a janitor, something deeper than his understanding of corporate hierarchy took over. It was the same instinct that had once made him stop his car on a rain-soaked highway to help a stranded motorist. The same compulsion that had him check on Mers Abernathy in 4B every time he passed her apartment. "Excuse me, ma'am? Are you all right?" The words escaped before he could reconsider. Marcus stepped into the doorway of the CEO's office, his heart hammering against his ribs. Katherine Langford sat behind a desk large enough to land a small plane. The polished surface reflected the city lights that stretched out 60 stories below, a carpet of electric stars. She looked up, startled, her hand quickly brushing at her eyes. In that brief, unguarded moment, Marcus could see that she had been crying. "What are you doing here?" Her voice had recovered its steel, but her eyes remained red-rimmed. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Miss Langford. I'm with the maintenance staff." He gestured to his cart. I thought maybe you needed assistance." Katherine straightened in her chair, her face rearranging itself into the composed mask that graced magazine covers and television interviews. The vulnerable woman of moments ago vanished, replaced by the formidable CEO whose reputation for ruthless efficiency had earned her the nickname, the Glacier in business circles. "No thank you. I'm fine." Her tone made it clear the conversation was over. Marcus nodded and began to back out of the office. "Of course. My apologies for the interruption." "Wait." The word stopped him in the doorway. "What's your name?" "Marcus Rivera, ma'am." Katherine studied him for a moment, her gaze cool and assessing. "You've worked here a long time, haven't you? 23 years next month?" Something flickered across her face, surprise, perhaps, or something else he couldn't quite identify. She looked down at the stack of files on her desk, then back up at him. "Thank you for your concern, Mr. Rivera. It's unusual." Marcus didn't know what to say to that, so he simply nodded again. "Good night, Miss Langford." As he wheeled his cart away, he felt her eyes on his back. It was the first time in 23 years that anyone in the executive suite had asked for his name. The second time Marcus encountered Katherine Langford was 2 weeks later. He was polishing the glass wall of the executive boardroom when the door flew open, and a stream of suits poured out, their faces grim. Marcus kept his head down, his hands moving in steady circles across the glass. Through the reflection, he watched them go. These men and women in tailored suits that cost more than he made in a month. The last to exit was Katherine Langford. Unlike the others, she paused in the doorway, her attention caught by something on her phone. Marcus continued his work, careful not to disturb her, but then she looked up directly at him, and he found himself caught in her gaze. "Mr. Rivera," she said, a note of recognition in her voice. Marcus straightened, surprised that she had remembered his name. "Yes, ma'am." She seemed about to say something, then changed her mind. "Nothing. Carry on." But that night, when Marcus came to clean her office, he found a note on her desk. *Mr. Rivera, **, please leave these files untouched. They contain confidential information. Thank you for your discretion. **K. Langford**. It was such a small thing, the acknowledgement that he might see sensitive materials, the implicit trust that he wouldn't look. But it struck Marcus as significant. After more than 2 decades of being treated as if he were invisible, someone had noticed him. The third time they spoke was during the Christmas party. Marcus wasn't attending, of course. Maintenance staff were scheduled to clean up after the executives had gone home. But he was in the service corridor behind the ballroom, collecting extra trash bags, when the door opened and Katherine Langford stepped through, phone pressed to her ear. "No. That's unacceptable. We need those numbers by morning." She paced the narrow hallway, unaware of Marcus at the far end. I don't care if it's Christmas Eve, this merger doesn't wait for, she broke off as she turned and saw him. For a moment they stared at each other in mutual surprise. Then she said into the phone, "I'll call you back," and ended the call. "Mr. Rivera, we meet again." Marcus nodded, uncomfortable with the situation. He was in her way, in her space. He should leave. "I'm sorry, Ms. Langford, I was just doing your job," she finished for him. As was I. For a moment neither spoke. Then Katherine gestured to the ballroom behind her. "Quite a party. Open bar, catered dinner." "The works." "Yes, ma'am." Marcus had glimpsed the elaborate decorations, the ice sculptures, the mountains of gourmet food. He had also seen the wasteful aftermath of corporate parties before, untouched appetizers tossed into garbage bags, expensive champagne poured down drains. Something in his tone must have given him away, because Katherine tilted her head, studying him. "You don't approve." It wasn't a question, but Marcus answered anyway, forgetting his place in his surprise at being addressed directly. "It's not my place to approve or disapprove, ma'am, but if it were..." Marcus hesitated. 23 years of carefully maintained invisibility warned him to say nothing, to nod and smile and back away. But something in her eyes, a challenge perhaps, or a genuine curiosity, made him speak. "If it were my place, I might suggest that the money spent on ice sculptures that melt in an hour could fund the employee education program that was cut last quarter." The words hung in the air between them. Marcus immediately regretted them. He had overstepped, forgotten his position. He waited for the dismissal, the cold reminder of his place in the hierarchy. Instead, Katherine Langford smiled, a small, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, but a smile nonetheless. "Interesting perspective, Mr. Rivera." She glanced at her watch. "I should get back." She turned to go, then paused, hand on the door. "How did you know about the education program?" Marcus shrugged. "My daughter was hoping to apply. She's studying accounting at the community college." Katherine nodded, absorbing this information. Then, without another word, she pushed open the door and disappeared back into the glittering party, leaving Marcus alone in the service corridor. The fourth time they spoke was New Year's Eve. The office was deserted, most employees having taken the week between Christmas and New Year's off, but the light in Katherine Langford's office still burned. Marcus knocked softly on the open door. "Excuse me, Ms. Langford, would you like me to come back later?" Katherine looked up from her computer, her face drawn with exhaustion. "No, come in. I'll work around you." Marcus entered cautiously, his movements quiet and efficient as he emptied the trash and dusted the surfaces. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows the city sparkled, preparing for midnight celebrations. "No plans for New Year's Eve, Ms. Langford?" The question slipped out before he could stop himself. Katherine's fingers stilled on her keyboard. For a moment Marcus thought he had overstepped again. Then she leaned back in her chair, rubbing her eyes. "The merger documents need to be finalized before the markets open on January 2nd. She gestured to the stack of papers beside her. "This is my celebration." Marcus nodded, continuing his work. He understood dedication to a job. Hadn't he missed countless family dinners, school performances, and holidays because the floors needed waxing or the carpets needed shampooing? "And you, Mr. Rivera? No plans with your daughter?" The mention of his daughter caught him by surprise. He hadn't expected her to remember that detail. "Elena is at her mother's tonight. They're in Phoenix now." Katherine seemed to consider this. "Yet you're here working, as are you," he pointed out, then immediately regretted the familiarity. But Katherine merely nodded, a rueful acknowledgement of their shared circumstance. "Indeed." Marcus finished cleaning in silence. As he prepared to leave, Katherine spoke again. "Mr. Rivera, may I ask you something?" He paused in the doorway. "Of course, ma'am. Why did you become a janitor?" The question was so unexpected that Marcus laughed. A short, surprised sound. "I didn't become a janitor, Ms. Langford. I needed a job, and this was what was available." "But surely you had other aspirations." Marcus considered the question. It had been a long time since anyone had asked him about his dreams. "I wanted to be an engineer, mechanical engineering, but life had other plans." Katherine's expression softened. The hardness that usually defined her features gave way to something more contemplative, more human. "What happened?" Marcus hesitated, unsure why the CEO of Langford Industries was interested in his life story. But there was something in her eyes, not pity, but genuine curiosity, that made him answer. "My father got sick when I was in my second year of college. Medical bills, you know how it is. I dropped out to help support the family, took this job thinking it would be temporary." He shrugged. 23 years later, here I am." Katherine nodded, her gaze drifting to the window and the glittering city beyond. "Life rarely follows the path we envision for it." There was something in her tone that made Marcus wonder about her own path, what dreams she might have set aside to become the glacier, but it wasn't his place to ask. "Happy New Year, Ms. Langford," he said instead, wheeling his cart toward the door. "Happy New Year, Miss Rivera," she replied, already turning back to her computer. The next time they spoke was different. Marcus was mopping the executive bathroom when he heard raised voices coming from Katherine's office. He tried not to listen, but the words carried down the empty hallway. "I understand your position, David, but I'm not changing my mind. The employee assistance program stays." A male voice responded, too low for Marcus to make out the words. "No," Katherine's voice was firm. "We are not cutting healthcare benefits to fund the Paris expansion. Find another way." More muffled discussion than the sound of a door slamming. Marcus quickly returned to his mopping, but not before he caught a glimpse of David Chun, the company's CFO, storming down the hallway, his face flushed with anger. Later that night, when Marcus came to clean Catherine's office, he found her still at her desk, surrounded by spreadsheets and financial projections. "You're working late again, Ms. Langford," he observed quietly. She looked up, fatigue etched in the lines around her eyes. "As are you, Mr. Rivera." Marcus moved efficiently around the office, dusting and straightening. "I heard some of your conversation earlier. I didn't mean to eavesdrop." Katherine leaned back in her chair, running a hand through her immaculate hair in a rare gesture of weariness. "Everyone wants to cut the programs that help our lowest-paid employees. They see it as an easy way to trim the budget." Marcus nodded, saying nothing. "You know what the board doesn't understand," Katherine continued, seemingly talking to herself as much as to him. "Those programs are what keep people like you." She stopped abruptly, realizing what she had said. "I'm sorry, that came out wrong. No need to apologize for the truth." "Miss Langford," Marcus said, emptying her trash can, "those programs are exactly for people like me. My health insurance covered my wife's cancer treatments before she passed. Without it, I would have lost everything." Catherine's eyes widened slightly. "I didn't know." "Why would you?" Marcus said without bitterness. "There are over 3,000 employees at Langford Industries." Katherine was silent for a moment, studying him with new interest. "Yet I know the names and personal details of every vice president, director, and manager in this company. I make it my business to know the people who work for me." "Some of them," Marcus corrected gently. The truth of his words hung between them. Katherine Langford prided herself on knowing her company inside and out, but she had blind spots entire categories of employees whose existence she acknowledged only in the abstract. "Thank you for your candor. Rivera," she said fine. "It's refreshing." Marcus finished his cleaning and prepared to leave. At the door, he paused. "For what it's worth, Ms. Langford, your employees appreciate your stance on the assistance program. Word gets around, even to those of us who aren't invited to the meeting." Katherine smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face. "Good night, Miss Rivera. Good night, Ms. Langford." A week later, Marcus received a summons to HR. His heart sank as he rode the elevator down to the 14th floor. In his experience, being called to human resources was never a good thing. Had he said too much to the CEO? Crossed a line he shouldn't have crossed? The HR director, a woman named Patricia, who had been with the company almost as long as Marcus, looked uncomfortable as she gestured for him to sit down. "Marcus, how long have you worked for Langford Industries?" she asked, though she clearly knew the answer. 23 years next month, he replied, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Patricia nodded. "And in all that time, you've never applied for a different position within the company?" The question surprised him. "No, I guess I haven't. May I ask why?" Marcus shifted in his seat. "I didn't think. I don't have a college degree. Most positions require at least a bachelor's." Patricia consulted her computer screen. "But you completed 2 years toward a mechanical engineering degree, correct? Before you had to drop out?" Marcus stared at her, bewildered. "Yes, but that was more than 20 years ago." Patricia smiled, seeming to relax a bit. "Marcus, the reason I called you here is that a new position has opened up in the Facilities Management Department, Assistant Director of Building Systems. It requires someone with practical knowledge of the building's mechanical system, experience with maintenance procedures, and strong problem-solving skills." Marcus's mind reeled. "And you're telling me about this because ... Because I've been instructed to encourage you to apply." Patricia slid a folder across the desk. "Here's the job description. The position comes with a significant salary increase, full benefits," and she paused, "tuition reimbursement if you wanted to complete your degree." Marcus opened the folder with shaking hands. The job description seemed tailored to his experience, his skills, even his half-completed education. "Who?" he began, but he already knew the answer. Patricia's smile confirmed it. "Ms. Langford specifically asked about your background. She seemed to think you might be qualified." Marcus closed the folder. "This is charity. I can't accept it." Patricia looked startled. "It's not charity, Marcus. It's an opportunity. Ms. Langford may have prompted us to look at your file, but the decision to interview you would be based on your qualifications." She leaned forward. "Do you know how many mechanical issues you've fixed over the years that other janitors would have called in contractors for? How much money you've saved the company? It's all in your performance reviews." Marcus hadn't known that anyone had noticed those things. He had fixed leaky pipes, rewired faulty outlets, diagnosed HVAC problems, not because it was his job, but because he could, and because it seemed wasteful to call in an expensive contractor for something he could handle. "Think about it," Patricia urged. "Applications close next Friday." Marcus carried the folder with him for the rest of his shift, tucked into the pocket of his blue uniform. When he entered Catherine's office to clean that night, she was, as usual, still working. "Good evening, Emma Rivera," she said without looking up. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus asked, placing the folder on her desk. Katherine glanced at the folder, then up at him, her expression neutral. "Doing what? Creating a job for me? This isn't... I don't need your pity." Catherine's eyes flashed. "I don't do pity, Rivera. It's a waste of time and resources." "Then what would you call this?" He tapped the folder. "I'd call it recognizing untapped potential." She stood up, smoothing her skirt. "The position is real. The need is real. And based on your personnel file, you're more than qualified." "My personnel file?" Marcus shook his head. "You looked into me." "Of course I did." Katherine walked around her desk to face him directly. "After our conversation, I became curious about why a man with your obvious intelligence and problem-solving abilities has spent over 2 decades cleaning offices. Marcus felt exposed, as if she had peeled back layers he had carefully constructed over years. Maybe I'm content with my work, are you? Katherine challenged, her gaze direct. The question hung in the air between them. Was he content? Marcus had buried his ambitions so deeply for so long that he barely recognized them anymore. He had convinced himself that providing for Elena, ensuring she had opportunities he had missed, was enough. It doesn't matter, he said finally. I can't interview for a position that was created for me. The other employees would resent it, and rightfully so. The position wasn't created for you, Katherine corrected him. It's been in the organizational chart for months. The previous assistant director retired last week. I simply asked HR to consider internal candidates before looking outside, including those who might not typically apply. Marcus stared at her, uncertain. Mr. Rivera, Marcus, Katherine said, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. I'm not offering you charity. I'm offering you a chance to be seen for who you really are, not just what you do. The words struck him with unexpected force. How long had it been since anyone had really seen him, since anyone had looked past his blue uniform to the man beneath? Think about it, Katherine said, echoing Patricia's words from earlier. That's all I ask. Marcus nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in his throat. He picked up the folder and tucked it back into his pocket. Now, Katherine said, her tone returning to its usual brisk efficiency, I believe you have an office to clean, and I have a conference call with Tokyo in 15 minutes. Just like that, they were back on familiar ground, the CEO and the janitor, separated by the vast gulf of corporate hierarchy. But something had shifted between them, a recognition that perhaps that gulf wasn't as uncrossable as it seemed. Marcus sat at his small kitchen table, the job application spread out before him. The lamp cast a warm yellow glow over the papers, illuminating the Langford Industries logo at the top of each page. His daughter's voice crackled through the speaker of his phone, which lay next to his coffee mug. Dad, are you serious? Assistant Director of Building Systems? That's amazing. Marcus smiled at Elena's enthusiasm. At 20, she had her mother's optimism and his stubbornness, of combination that had carried her through community college while working part-time at a local accounting firm. I haven't applied yet, sweetheart. I'm still thinking about it. What's there to think about? It sounds perfect for you. Elena's voice rose with excitement. All those times you've fixed our neighbor's appliances, rewired Miss S. Guzman's kitchen, installed Miss Wilson's water heater. You've been doing this stuff for years. It's different, Marcus protested, but his daughter was on a roll. And the tuition reimbursement. Dad, you could finish your degree. Marcus stared at that line in the benefits package. Asterisk tuition reimbursement for job-related education. Asterisk. It was the part that had kept him awake for the past 3 nights. I'm 52 years old, Elena. I'd be the oldest student in every class. So what? Elena's voice softened. Dad, you've spent my whole life telling me that education doesn't have an expiration date, that it's never too late to learn, to grow. Marcus closed his eyes, hearing his own words echoed back. He had believed them when he said them to Elena. Why was it so hard to apply that wisdom to himself? And besides, Elena continued, you always said you put your dreams on hold to give me opportunities. Well, I'm good now. I'm almost done with my accounting degree. It's your turn. Marcus looked around his small apartment, nice, clean and modest, just like his life had been for the past 23 years. What would it mean to want more at his age? To reach for something he had long ago convinced himself was out of reach? I'll think about it, he promised. Don't think too long. When's the deadline? Friday. That's in 2 days, Dad. Marcus chuckled at her alarm. I know how calendars work, sweetheart. After they hung up, Marcus stared at the application for another hour before finally picking up a pen. His hand hovered over the paper for a long moment before he began to write. The next morning, Marcus arrived at work earlier than usual. He placed the sealed application envelope on Patricia's desk in HR before he could change his mind, then hurried back to the maintenance level to begin his shift. All day, as he cleaned offices and emptied trash cans, Marcus second-guessed his decision. Was he making a fool of himself? What if the other candidates had actual degrees, formal training? What if the interview committee laughed at him? By the time he reached the executive floor that evening, his stomach was in knots. Katherine's office was dark when he arrived, unusual for a Wednesday night. Marcus felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. He had half hoped to see her, to gauge from her expression whether his application had been received, whether it had been taken seriously. He was polishing the conference room table when he heard the familiar click of heels on marble. Katherine appeared in the doorway, still wearing her coat, as if she had just returned to the office. Mr. Rivera, she said, sounding slightly breathless. I'm glad I caught you. Marcus straightened up, polishing cloth in hand. Miss Langford, working late again? Always. She smiled briefly, then grew serious. I wanted to speak with you. HR informed me that you submitted your application today. Marcus nodded, uncertain what to say. I'm pleased, Katherine said, choosing her words carefully. The interview committee meets tomorrow. I've recused myself, of course, to avoid any appearance of favoritism. I appreciate that, Marcus said, relief mingling with a new tension. Without Katherine on the committee, would anyone see past his current position to his potential? As if reading his thoughts, Katherine added, the committee is aware of your extensive practical experience. Patricia will make sure they understand the unique value you bring. Marcus set down his polishing cloth. Miss Langford, may I ask you something? She nodded. Why me? Out of all the employees at Langford Industries, why did you take an interest in my career? Katherine considered the question, her expression thoughtful. Do you remember when we first spoke? Ria spoke, not just past each other in the hallway. In your office that night when I heard you ... Single quotes. Marcus trailed off, not wanting to remind her of her moment of vulnerability. When you heard me crying, Katherine finished for him. Yes. Do you know what happened that day? Marcus shook his head. I just received news that my brother's experimental treatment had failed. The doctors had given him 6 months. She said this matter-of-factly, but Marcus could see the pain behind her composed exterior. You were the only person in this entire building who noticed that something was wrong and asked if I needed help. Marcus hadn't known about her brother. The revelation struck him with unexpected force. I'm sorry about your brother. Thank you. Katherine's gaze was direct, unflinching. The point is, you saw me as a person, not just as the CEO. And that made me wonder if I had been guilty of the same blindness, seeing people only for their functions, not for who they really are. The admission surprised Marcus. He had never expected such self-reflection from the glacier. Your interview is at 10 tomorrow morning, Katherine said, changing the subject abruptly. 5th floor, conference room B. I'll be there. Katherine nodded and turned to leave. At the door, she paused. For what it's worth, Miss Rivera, I believe you're the most qualified candidate. But regardless of the outcome, I hope you'll continue your education. The company will support you either way. Before Marcus could respond, she was gone, leaving him standing alone in the conference room, his reflection staring back at him from the polished table. The interview committee consisted of 5 people. Patricia from HR, the Director of Facilities Management, the Chief Operations Officer, and 2 senior managers Marcus had seen around the building but never spoken to. They sat on one side of the conference table, Marcus on the other, his resume and application in a neat folder before them. Monsieur Rivera, the coup began. You've been with Langford Industries for quite some time, 23 years next month, sir, and you believe your experience as a janitor qualifies you for a management position? The question was blunt, challenging. Marcus felt a flash of indignation, quickly followed by resignation. This was exactly what he had feared. But before he could respond, Patricia interjected. Perhaps we could review Rivera's specific qualifications rather than his job title? The coup nodded, somewhat chastened. Of course, Mr. Rivera, your application mentions extensive experience with building systems maintenance. Could you elaborate? Marcus took a deep breath and began to speak. He described the countless times he had diagnosed problems with the HVAC system before they became major issues. He explained how he had created an improved maintenance schedule for the building's elevators that had reduced downtime by nearly 30%. He talked about the informal network he had developed with other maintenance workers to share information and solution. As he spoke, Marcus could see the committee's expressions changing, skepticism giving way to interest. And you implemented these improvements on your own initiative, the Director of Facilities asked. Without being asked? Yes, sir. I saw problems that needed solving and I solved them. Why? The director pressed. It wasn't part of your job description. Marcus considered the question, because it needed to be done, because it seemed wasteful not to use the knowledge I had, because this building has been my responsibility for 23 years, and I take that seriously. The committee exchanged glances. The Director of Facilities smiled slightly. Thank you, Mr. Rivera, Patricia said. We'll be in touch soon. As Marcus left the conference room, he felt a strange lightness. Regardless of the outcome, he had spoken his truth. He had claimed his knowledge, his experience, his worth. For the first time in years, he had allowed himself to want something more. That evening, as Marcus cleaned the executive floor, Katherine's assistant stopped him in the hallway. Ms. Langford would like to see you in her office, she said. Marcus's heart raced as he made his way to Katherine's office. She was standing by the window looking out at the city lights when he entered. Miss Rivera, she said, turning to face him. Please sit down. Marcus sat, his hands resting on his knees. I've just received the committee's recommendation. Katherine's face gave nothing away. Marcus nodded, steeling himself for disappointment. They were unanimously impressed by your knowledge, your initiative, and your commitment to this company. A smile broke through her professional facade. They've recommended you for the position. Marcus stared at her, not quite processing the words. You got the job, Marcus. The use of his first name, so unexpected, so personal, brought the reality of the moment into sharp focus. He had done it. He had taken a chance, and it had paid off. I don't know what to say, he managed. Say yes, Katherine suggested, her smile growing. Say you'll accept the position, the salary increase, the tuition reimbursement. Say you'll finally finish that engineering degree. Marcus thought of Elena, of how proud she would be. He thought of his father, who had always believed Marcus would do great things. He thought of all the years he had spent in the shadows of this building, watching others rise while he remained invisible. Yes, he said, his voice stronger than he expected. I accept. Katherine extended her hand across the desk. Congratulations, Mr. Rivera, or should I say Assistant Director Rivera. As Marcus shook her hand, he felt the ground shifting beneath him, the familiar terrain of his carefully contained life giving way to something new, something challenging, something full of possibility. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have predicted, was how this moment would change not just his life, but Katherine's as well. The threads of their stories, so different yet increasingly intertwined, were being rewoven into a pattern neither of them could have imagined. Marcus's first day as assistant assistant director of building systems began with a new employee orientation. Despite his 23 years at Langford Industries, there was paperwork to complete, benefits to review, and a new ID badge that read Marcus Rivera, assistant director instead of maintenance staff. He ran his thumb over the embossed letters, still not quite believing they were real. Patricia from HR led him to his new office on the 5th floor, a modest space with a desk, computer, and small window overlooking the city. It was nothing like Katherine's expansive corner office. But to Marcus, who had spent decades working out of a cramped maintenance closet, it felt palatial. "Your team will be here at 9 for introductions," Patricia informed him. "There are 7 building engineers and 4 maintenance supervisors reporting to you directly." Marcus nodded, a knot forming in his stomach. Some of those maintenance supervisors had been his colleagues until yesterday. Now he would be their boss. How would they react? Would they resent him? See him as a charity case promoted above his station through the CEO's inexplicable favor? "Nervous?" Patricia asked, noticing his expression. "A little," Marcus admitted. Patricia patted his arm. "You earned this, Marcus. Remember that." After she left, Marcus sat at his new desk, running his hands over the smooth surface. The computer screen glowed expectantly, displaying the Langford Industries logo. His email inbox already contained 27 messages, most with the subject line, "Welcome aboard." He would need to learn to type faster. At precisely 9 o'clock, his team arrived. Marcus recognized most of them, men and women he had worked alongside for years, though always from the periphery. They filed into his office, some looking curious, others clearly skeptical. "Morning, everyone," Marcus began, standing up. "I'm Marcus Rivera, though many of you already know me." "Yeah. You're the janitor who got promoted," said a burly maintenance supervisor named Frank. There was an edge to his voice that made the room tense. Marcus met his gaze steadily. "I was a janitor. Now I'm the assistant director of building systems. Just like you were once an apprentice electrician, and now you're a maintenance supervisor." Frank looked surprised, then grudgingly impressed that Marcus knew his background. "I've been in this building for 23 years. Marcus continued. "I know every pipe, duct, and circuit. I've fixed problems and systems most people don't even know exist. And now I'm here to help all of you do your jobs better, more efficiently, and with the resources you need." He took a deep breath, looking around the room. "I don't expect your respect just because of my title. I'll earn it, and I expect the same from each of you." The meeting continued with introductions and a brief overview of pending projects. By the time the team filed out, the atmosphere had shifted. The skepticism wasn't entirely gone, but it had been tempered by Marcus's directness and evident knowledge of the building's systems. Later that morning, Marcus found himself in the executive conference room, seated at the large table he had polished countless times. Now he was attending his first leadership meeting, surrounded by directors and vice presidents in tailored suits and silk ties. He was acutely aware of his department store shirt and the absence of cufflinks. Katherine sat at the head of the table, commanding the room's attention with effortless authority. She nodded slightly when Marcus entered, but otherwise gave no indication of their previous interaction. He was grateful for her discretion. "Before we begin," Katherine said once everyone was seated, "I'd like to introduce our newest addition to the leadership team. Marcus Rivera has joined us as Assistant Director of Building System. Marcus brings over 2 decades of hands-on experience with our facilities infrastructure and has already implemented numerous cost-saving innovations during his tenure." The executives around the table nodded politely, their expressions ranging from indifferent to mildly curious. Marcus understood that in their world, the mechanical functioning of the building was a background concern, far less important than market expansions or quarterly earnings. The meeting progressed through financial reports, marketing strategies, and operational updates. Marcus listened attentively, absorbing the rhythm and language of executive decision-making. When the discussion turned to the planned renovation of the West Wing, he found himself unexpectedly in the spotlight. "What's your assessment of the disruption to building systems during construction, Rivera?" asked the chief operations officer. Marcus cleared his throat. "The plans as they stand would require shutting down the main electrical conduit for at least 48 hours. That would affect not just the West Wing, but the data center and emergency backup systems as well." A murmur went around the table. "The data center housed the company's most critical information systems. Is there an alternative?" Katherine asked. Marcus nodded, surprised by his own confidence. "Yes. If we reroute the power through the service tunnels on the north side, we could maintain critical systems while the renovation proceeds. It would add about $15,000 to the budget, but save potential downtime costs that could run into the million." The coup looked impressed. "That's not in the current plans." "No, sir. The architectural firm wouldn't necessarily know about the service tunnel access. It's not on the main building schematics." Katherine's eyes met his across the table, a flicker of approval in their depths. "Make it happen," she told the coup. "Work with Marcus on the revisions." As the meeting adjourned, Marcus felt a strange mix of pride and disorientation. He had just influenced a multi-million-dollar decision based on knowledge he'd gained while crawling through service tunnels with a flashlight clenched between his teeth. The first week passed in a whirlwind of meetings, emails, and unexpected challenges. Marcus's hands, calloused from years of manual labor, now ached from typing reports and proposals. His mind, long accustomed to the solitary rhythm of janitorial work, had to adjust to constant collaboration and communication. On Friday afternoon, Katherine's assistant appeared at his office door. "Ms. Langford would like to see you." Marcus followed her to the executive floor. acutely aware that just 1 week ago he would have been pushing a cleaning cart through these same hallways. Now, executives nodded to him as he passed, acknowledging him as a peer rather than part of the background. Katherine was reviewing documents when he entered her office. She looked up, setting aside her reading glasses. "Mr. Rivera, how was your first week?" Challenging, Marcus admitted. "But good." She gestured for him to sit. "Any regrets?" Marcus considered the question. The week had been overwhelming, demanding skills he was still developing. He had made mistakes, felt out of place, questioned whether he truly belonged in this new role. "No," he said finally. "No regrets." Katherine nodded, satisfied. The registration deadline for the spring semester at City University is next Friday. Engineering courses are offered in the evenings and online." She slid a brochure across the desk. "The tuition reimbursement paperwork is already in process." Marcus took the brochure, a mixture of emotions welling up inside him. "I haven't decided yet if I'm going back to school." Katherine's eyebrow arched slightly. "I thought that was part of our agreement. You offered the opportunity," Marcus corrected. "I'm still considering whether it's the right path for me at this stage of my life." For a moment, Katherine looked like she might argue, then she seemed to reconsider. "Fair enough. It's your decision." The acknowledgement of his agency, small as it was, meant something to Marcus. Throughout his life, circumstances had often dictated his choices, narrowed his options. Here was Katherine Langford with all her power and privilege, recognizing his right to choose his own path. "Thank you," he said simply. Katherine nodded, then changed the subject. "The modifications you suggested for the West Wing renovation have saved us considerable time and money. The board has taken notice." Marcus shifted uncomfortably at the praise. "I just applied what I already knew." That's precisely the point," Katherine said. "You possess knowledge that no one else in this company has. Practicable, hands-on understanding of how this building actually works, not just how it's supposed to work on paper." Marcus hadn't thought of it that way before. His knowledge had always seemed commonplace to him, the accumulated wisdom of years spent in the building's veins and arteries. "I wanted to ask you something," Katherine continued. "How did you learn about the service tunnel? They're not on any of the official floor plans." Marcus smiled slightly. "When I first started here, there was an old maintenance man named Hector. He'd been here since the building opened in the 70s. He showed me all the shortcuts, the hidden access points, the places where the architect's vision had been compromised during construction." "And you remembered all of it?" "It was interesting to me," Marcus said simply. "How things work, how they fit together, how they can be fixed when they break. I always wanted to be an engineer." Katherine studied him for a moment. "And now you have the chance." Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of possibility pressing on him. After so many years of narrowed horizons, the sudden expansion was almost dizzying. "I should let you get back to your work," he said, standing to leave. "One more thing," Katherine said. "There's a leadership retreat next weekend at Lake Geneva. All directors and above are expected to attend. My assistant will send you the details." Marcus paused at the door. "What exactly happens at these retreats?" A hint of amusement flickered in Katherine's eye. "Team-building exercises, strategic planning sessions, and an inexplicable amount of golf." She shrugged. "It's tradition." Marcus, who had never held a golf club in his life, felt a new wave of anxiety, but he nodded professionally. "I'll be there." As he walked back to his office, Marcus realized he was straddling two worlds: the familiar terrain of maintenance rooms and service corridors, and the uncharted territory of executive meetings and leadership retreats. He wasn't fully comfortable in either anymore, existing instead in the liminal space between. The Langford Industries Leadership Retreat was held at a luxury resort overlooking Lake Geneva. Marcus drove his 15-year-old Honda Civic past a line of gleaming luxury vehicles to the valet stand, where a young attendant in a crisp uniform looked dubiously at his car before taking the keys. Inside the resort lobby, marble floors and soaring ceilings created an atmosphere of rarefied privilege. A banner reading "Langford Industries Leadership Excellent" hung above a registration table staffed by efficient-looking assistants. "Marcus Rivera," he told the young woman at the table. "Assistant Director of Building Systems." She checked her list, then handed him a folder containing his agenda, room key, and name badge. "Welcome, Mr. Rivera. The opening reception begins in the Lakeside Pavilion at 6. Marcus nodded his thanks and headed to his room. The elevator was mirrored, and he caught his reflection as he ascended, a middle-aged man in a new but unremarkable suit, surrounded by polished brass and mahogany. He looked like what he was, someone who didn't quite belong. His room was larger than his entire apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a sweeping view of the lake. On the desk was a gift basket containing wine, artisanal chocolates, and a handwritten note welcoming him to the Langford family leadership team. Marcus ran his fingers over the heavy cardstock, wondering if Katherine had written the note herself, or if it was the work of some unseen assistant tasked with creating the illusion of personal touch. He unpacked quickly, hanging his 2 dress shirts and single extra suit in the closet. The retreat was scheduled for 3 days, and he had packed accordingly, leaving room in his suitcase for the course catalog from City University. He had brought it despite his ambivalence, spending quiet evenings studying the engineering prerequisites and degree requirements. At precisely 6 o'clock, Marcus made his way to the Lakeside Pavilion. The reception was already in full swing. Executives clustered in groups of 3 and 4, drinks in hand, laughter bubbling up in well-modulated waves. Marcus recognized most of them from meetings, but had spoken to few outside the formal conference room setting. He accepted a glass of white wine from a passing server and stood at the periphery, observing the social dynamics with the same quiet attention he had once given to the building's mechanical systems. Not your scene either, huh? Marcus turned to find a woman in her early 40s standing beside him. Her name badge identified her as Dr. Amara Chun, Research Director. Is it that obvious? Marcus asked. Amara grinned. You have the same look I had at my first retreat. Like you're calculating the fastest escape route. Marcus laughed, relaxing slightly. I'm that transparent. Engineers usually are. She clinked her glass against his. So, building systems? You're new. Promoted last week, Marcus confirmed. Ah, the famous janitor turned executive. The gossip mill has been working overtime on your story. Marcus stiffened. What are they saying? Amara shrugged. The usual petty speculation. That you must have dirt on someone important. That you're Katherine Langford's charity project. That you're secretly her lover. She rolled her eyes. People can't fathom the idea that maybe you were simply the most qualified person for the job. Marcus took a long sip of his wine, buying time to compose his response. And, what do you think? I think Katherine Langford doesn't do anything without a strategic purpose. Amara studied him with intelligent eyes. And I think there's more to your story than most people here could understand. Before Marcus could respond, a ripple went through the crowd. Katherine Langford had entered the pavilion, wearing a simple but elegant navy dress that somehow made everyone else look slightly overdressed. She moved through the gathering with practiced ease, greeting key executives by name, her smile measured and precise. When she reached Marcus and Amara, her expression warmed perceptibly. Dr. Chun, I see you've met our newest director. We were just discussing the intricacies of corporate hierarchy, Amara said with a mischievous smile, and how some people manage to defy it. Catherine's eyes flickered to Marcus. The best organizations are meritocracies, not oligarchy. Don't you agree, Mr. Rivera? In theory, Marcus replied, surprising himself with his candor. Though in my experience, the two are often confused. A brief smile touched Catherine's lips, a real one, not the polished version she wore for the board members. Indeed, perhaps that's something we should discuss during tomorrow's strategy session. She turned to move on, then added, the sunrise over the lake is quite spectacular, Mr. Rivera. The east dock offers the best view, around 5:30. With that cryptic comment, she continued her circuit of the room, leaving Marcus puzzled and Amara visibly intrigued. Well, Amara said, that was interesting. What was? Marcus asked, genuinely confused. Amara gave him a knowing look. Nothing. I should mingle, but let's talk more later. I want to hear your thoughts on the West Wing renovation. As she walked away, Marcus wondered what exactly had just happened. Was Catherine's comment about the sunrise simply small talk, or had it been an invitation? And why had Amara reacted as if she'd witnessed something significant? The reception gave way to dinner, a formal affair with assigned seating. Marcus found himself at a table with the chief marketing officer, 2 regional directors, and a group of mid-level managers. The conversation revolved around market expansions, competitive strategies, and vacation homes topics that left Marcus with little to contribute. So Rivera, the CMO, said during dessert, I hear you've been with Langford for over 20 years. That's impressive longevity. Marcus nodded, aware that everyone at the table was suddenly interested in his response. 23 years next month? And all that time is ... maintenance staff? The question was posed with studied casualness, but its intent was clear. Yes, Marcus said simply, refusing to be baited. I've had the opportunity to learn this company from the ground up. Literally, a junior manager snickered, but the CMO merely nodded, his expression thoughtful. An unusual path to leadership, but perhaps a valuable one, Marcus countered. I know things about Langford Industries that you can't learn in a boardroom or a business school, such as. The CMO seemed genuinely curious now, such as the fact that the night cleaning staff has been understaffed for years, resulting in hastily cleaned offices and increased illness rates among employees, or that the building's original air filtration system was never properly upgraded during the 2012 renovation, which is why the East Wing has significantly higher energy costs than the West. The table had gone quiet, all eyes on Marcus. These may seem like small details, he continued, but they affect productivity, costs, and employee satisfaction in ways that don't show up clearly in quarterly reports. The CMO studied Marcus with new interest. You know, Rivera, I think I understand why Katherine brought you onto the leadership team. The evening concluded with cocktails and networking. Marcus excused himself around 10, citing the need for an early start. In truth, he was mentally exhausted from the constant navigation of social cues and professional expectations so different from those that had governed his life for decades. Back in his room, he stood at the window looking out at the dark silhouette of the lake. Tomorrow would bring more challenges. Team-building exercises, strategy sessions, and worst of all, the afternoon golf tournament. Marcus had spent the past week watching YouTube videos on golf basics, but he held few illusions about his ability to avoid embarrassment. He set his alarm for 5 a.m., then opened the City University catalog. The engineering courses looked both intimidating and exhilarating. Could he really go back to school at his age? Sit in classrooms with students half his age? Learn calculus and physics and computer modeling when he'd spent the last 23 years cleaning up after those who already think. Yet there was something compelling about the challenge. A voice inside him, one that sounded remarkably like his daughter's, asked why he couldn't at least try. Marcus fell asleep with the catalog open on his chest, dreaming of equations and blueprints, and a future he had long ago stopped imagining for himself. The alarm woke him at 5 a.m. He dressed quickly in jeans and a sweater, then made his way through the silent resort to the east dock. The sky was just beginning to light, a faint glow on the horizon promising the sunrise Katherine had mentioned. To his surprise, she was already there, seated on a bench at the end of the dock. She wore casual clothes, dark leggings, a thick sweater, and running shoes, a stark contrast to her usual tailored suits. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and without her usual makeup, she looked younger, more vulnerable. She glanced up as he approached. "You came. You suggested it," Marcus replied, sitting down beside her. The wooden bench creaked under his weight. "I wasn't sure you'd interpret it correctly, or that you'd want to." They sat in silence for a moment, watching as the first golden rays of sunlight pierced the horizon, sending shimmers of light across the lake's surface. "It's beautiful," Marcus said finally. "I come here every year," Katherine said quietly. "This retreat has been held at the same resort since my father was CEO. He used to bring me when I was a child, and we'd watch the sunrise together from this very spot." The personal revelation surprised Marcus. In all their interactions, Katherine had never spoken about her father, the company's founder, or her childhood. "I didn't know you grew up with the company," he said. Katherine smiled faintly. "Langford Industries was my father's third child after me and my brother. It shaped my entire life." She turned to look at him directly. "What about you? What shaped your life, Marcus?" The use of his first name, spoken in the quiet intimacy of dawn, created a strange sense of connection between them. For a moment, they weren't CEO and employee, but simply two people sharing a sunrise. Marcus watched the morning light play across the lake's surface, considering Katherine's unexpected question. What had shaped his life? No one had asked him that in years, perhaps ever. "Necessity, mostly," he answered finally. "My father's illness, my mother's strength, a child to support." He paused, searching for the right words. "And disappointment, I suppose. Learning to live with deferred dreams." Katherine nodded slowly. "Yet you never gave up entirely. Even while cleaning offices, you were solving engineering problems, improving systems." "It was a way to use my mind," Marcus admitted. "To remind myself I was more than just a man with a mop." They sat in silence for a moment, the confession hanging in the air between them. "My father shaped my life through absence," Katherine said suddenly. "He was always at the office, always at meeting, always somewhere else. Even when we were here at this very spot, his mind was on the company." Her voice remained even, but Marcus detected an undertone of old pain. "He taught me that success requires sacrifice, usually of the personal." "Is that what you believe?" Marcus asked. Katherine considered the question. "It's what I've practiced, perhaps too well." She glanced at her watch. "The first session starts at 8. We should get back." Just like that, the moment of vulnerability was over. Katherine stood, once again the composed CEO, even in casual clothes. But something had shifted between them. A small window had opened, offering a glimpse of the woman behind the corporate facade. They walked back to the resort in companionable silence. At the entrance, Katherine paused. "The golf tournament this afternoon," she began. "I'm afraid I'll embarrass myself thoroughly," Marcus said with a rueful smile. "I've never played." "Exactly why I'm reassigning you," Katherine replied. "The environmental impact assessment for the new Denver facility is due Monday. Amara Chun is leading the review team, and they could use your expertise on sustainable building systems." Marcus was momentarily speechless. "Your ... Excusing me from golf?" A flicker of amusement crossed Katherine's face. "Unless you'd prefer to spend 4 hours humiliating yourself in front of the board?" "No," Marcus said quickly. "Thank you. I'll find Dr. Chun." Katherine nodded and headed toward the elevators. Marcus watched her go, wondering at this small act of kindness. Had she orchestrated this to spare him embarrassment, or did the Denver project truly need his input? With Katherine, he was beginning to realize, professional considerations and personal gestures often intertwined in ways difficult to untangle. The morning sessions were devoted to strategic planning. Marcus found himself in a breakout group focused on operational efficiency, where his practical knowledge of building systems proved surprisingly relevant to discussions about resource allocation and infrastructure investment. "The problem," he explained to the group, "is that we tend to look at systems in isolation. HVAC, electrical, plumbing, they're all managed by different contractors with different maintenance schedules. But in reality, they're interconnected. A malfunction in one affects the efficiency of all." The VP of Operations nodded thoughtfully. "Like organizational silos. Marketing doesn't talk to product development. Product development doesn't consult customer service. And we end up with inefficient processes." "Exactly," Marcus said, warming to the analogy. "What we need is an integrated approach to building management, one team overseeing all systems, with coordinated maintenance and upgrades." By lunchtime, the group had developed a proposal for restructuring the facilities management department, with Marcus's integrated approach as its centerpiece. The VP of Operations clapped him on the shoulder as they headed to the dining room. "Solid work, Rivera. You've got a good head for systems thinking." Marcus accepted the praise with a mixture of pride and disbelief. A month ago, these executives wouldn't have given him a second glance as he emptied their trash can. Now they were treating him as a colleague, valuing his insights, incorporating his ideas into company policy. After lunch, while most of the leadership team headed to the golf course, Marcus joined Amara Chun and her small team in a conference room overlooking the lake. Architectural plans and environmental impact reports covered the large table. "Katherine mentioned you might have some insights on sustainable building system," Amara said as Marcus took a seat. "We're trying to reduce the Denver facility's carbon footprint without blowing the budget." For the next 3 hours, Marcus immersed himself in the plans, identifying opportunities for energy efficient, water conservation, and sustainable materials. His practical experience complemented the team's theoretical knowledge, resulting in several innovative solutions that would significantly reduce both environmental impact and long-term operational costs. "Where did you learn all this?" Amara asked as they wrapped up. "Most facilities managers I know are focused on keeping the lights on, not reimagining building system." Marcus shrugged. "I read a lot, trade journals, engineering blogs. When you spend 23 years maintaining buildings, you develop an interest in how they could work better." Amara studied him with renewed interest. "You're not what I expected, Marcus Rivera." "What did you expect?" "Someone less substantial." She gathered her notes. "The rumor mill paints you as Catherine's charity project, but I'm beginning to think it's the other way around." "What do you mean?" Amara smiled enigmatically. "Just that Katherine Langford doesn't do anything without multiple reasons. Promoting you benefits the company, yes, but I suspect it benefits her in ways that have nothing to do with building systems." She glanced at her watch. The golfers should be finishing up soon. Want to join me for a drink on the terrace?" The schadenfreude of watching executives with wounded pride is quite entertaining. Marcus declined, retreating instead to his room to review the City University catalog once more. The conversation with Katherine at sunrise had stirred something in him. Realization that while circumstances had shaped his life, his response to those circumstances had been his own choice. He had allowed necessity to narrow his horizon, disappointment to define his limits. What would happen if he chose differently now? The evening banquet was a formal affair. Marcus wore his one good suit, purchased hastily for the retreat. As he entered the ballroom, he was surprised to find Amara-chan waiting for him. "I saved you a seat at our table," she said, guiding him through the crowd. "Much more interesting than sitting with the golf contingent. They're still nursing their wounded egos after the CFO's spectacular showing on the back nine." Their table included several directors from research and development, along with the VP of International Operation. The conversation was lively and inclusive, touching on topics from renewable energy to artificial intelligence. Marcus found himself engaged and animated, contributing insights from his unique perspective. Across the room, Katherine sat at the head table with the board members. Occasionally, her gaze would find him, lingering momentarily before moving on. Each time, Marcus felt a strange tension, a mixture of gratitude for the opportunity she had given him and resentment at the unspoken power, dynamics that still defined their relationship. After dinner, as the formalities gave way to mingling, Katherine approached their table. "Dr. Chun, I hear your team made significant progress on the Denver project." Amara nodded. "Thanks to Marcus. His suggestions will reduce operational costs by an estimated 18% over 5 years. Katherine's eyes shifted to Marcus, a subtle look in her gaze. "Excellent work. The board will be pleased." "It was a team effort," Marcus said, uncomfortable with the singular credit. "Always the modest one," Amara teased. "You should join us for a nightcap, Katherine. We're continuing our discussion on sustainable technology in the lounge." To Marcus's surprise, Katherine accepted, for a little while perhaps. In the intimate setting of the hotel lounge, with soft jazz playing and the formalities of the banquet behind them, a different dynamic emerged. Katherine, removed from the expectations of her board members, was more relaxed and engaged. She listened intently to the discussion, occasionally offering sharp insights that revealed her deep understanding of the company's technology portfolio. Marcus watched her with newfound appreciation. He had always known she was intelligent and driven, but tonight he glimpsed the passionate innovator beneath the cool executive exterior. As the evening wound down, Katherine excused herself. "Early flight tomorrow," she explained. "The Tokyo office needs attention before the quarter ends." Marcus stood as well. "I should turn in too. Long day." They walked together to the elevators, leaving the others engrossed in conversation about quantum computing. "Did you register for classes?" Katherine asked as they waited. The question caught Marcus off guard. "Not yet. I'm still considering it." "What's holding you back?" Marcus hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Pride, maybe. Starting over at my age. Sitting in classrooms with kids half my age who've never had to put their dreams on hold." The elevator arrived and they stepped inside. As the doors closed, sealing them in the small space together, Katherine turned to face him. "I was wrong about you, Marcus," she said quietly. "In what way?" "I thought you needed my help, my intervention. But now I'm beginning to think it was presumptuous of." She pressed the button for her floor. "You had built a life on your own terms. You found dignity in work that others might consider beneath them. You educated yourself despite obstacles. Who am I to decide that wasn't enough?" The elevator stopped at Katherine's floor. She stepped out, then turned back to face him. "Whatever you decide about the classes, it should be your choice, not mine. Not because you think it's what I expect." The doors began to through the narrowing gap, Katherine added, "For what it's worth, I think you would make an excellent engineer. But you're already an exceptional man." The doors closed completely, leaving Marcus alone with her words echoing in his mind. For the first time since his promotion, he felt truly seen, not as a project, not as a charity case, but as a man who had made difficult choices and lived with their consequences with grace and resilience. After the retreat, Marcus returned to work with a renewed sense of purpose. The respect he had earned from the leadership team translated into greater authority within his department. His integrated approach to building systems management was being implemented company-wide, and his team, once skeptical of their former janitor-turned-director, now looked to him for guidance with genuine respect. But Katherine's parting words at the retreat lingered in his mind. "Asterisk, you're already an exceptional man." The acknowledgement had touched something deep within him, a hunger hunger for recognition he hadn't realized he still carried after so many years of invisibility. On Friday afternoon, the last day to register for spring classes at City University, Marcus sat in his office staring at the online application form. The cursor blinked steadily in the empty fields, waiting for his decision. His phone rang. Elena's smiling face appeared on the screen. "Hey, sweetheart. Dad, did you register yet?" "Today's the deadline." Marcus smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. "I'm looking at the form right now." "And? What's stopping you?" He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I'm not sure, Elena. I've been thinking about what Katherine Langford said at the retreat, which was that it should be my choice, not because of her expectations or the company." Elena was quiet for a moment. "She's right. But Dad, what do you want?" The question hung in the air. What did he want? For so many years, his wants had been subordinated to necessity, to responsibility, to the practical demands of single parenthood and survival. The luxury of wanting something purely for himself was almost foreign. "I want to know," he said finally. "I want to understand how things work, why they work. I want to create and build, not just maintain and repair." "That sounds like a yes to me," Elena said softly. Marcus looked at the cursor, still blinking patiently. "It's been so long since I was in a classroom. What if I can't keep up?" "Then you'll work harder, like you always have." Elena's voice was warm but firm. "Dad, you're the smartest person I know. You've been teaching yourself engineering from books and YouTube for years. Imagine what you could do with actual professors and labs." Marcus smiled at his daughter's unwavering faith in him. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." After they hung up, Marcus completed the application form, selecting 3 courses for the spring semester: engineering mathematics, introduction to mechanical engineering, and technical writing for engineers. As he clicked submit, he felt a weight lifting. The burden of deferred dreams finally set in motion. The following Monday, Marcus attended his first executive staff meeting as a full-fledged member of the leadership team. He had prepared a comprehensive presentation on the integrated building systems approach, complete with projected cost savings and efficiency metrics. Katherine opened the meeting with her usual brisk efficiency, moving through the agenda items with practiced precision. When it was Marcus's turn, he stood, conscious of the eyes of every executive around the table. 6 weeks ago, he had been cleaning these same offices after hours, invisible to the people who now waited for his insights. The symmetry was not lost on him as he began his presentation. "The traditional approach to building management treats each system as a separate entity," he explained, advancing through his carefully prepared slide. "HVAC, electrical, plumbing, security, each with its own maintenance schedule, its own contractors, its own budget. This siloed approach creates inefficiencies, redundancies, and unnecessary costs." As he spoke, Marcus could see the executives leaning forward, engaged by the clarity of his analysis and the practical wisdom of his recommendation. Even the CFO, initially skeptical of any proposal requiring upfront investment, nodded approvingly at the projected 5-year saving. Katherine watched from the head of the table, her expression inscrutable. When Marcus concluded, she was the first to speak. "Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Your proposal is comprehensive and well-reasoned." She turned to the CFO. "David, what's your assessment?" The CFO adjusted his glasses. "The numbers make sense. If these projected savings are accurate, the ROI would be substantial." "They're accurate," Marcus said with quiet calm. "I've been tracking these costs for years." The CFO raised an eyebrow. As a janitor, there was a moment of tense silence around the table. The word hung in the air like an accusation, a reminder of Marcus's previous status. "Yes," Marcus replied evenly, "as someone who witnessed firsthand the inefficiencies of our current system, who saw contractors come and go, problems occur, and solutions applied piecemeal rather than systematically." Katherine's voice cut through the tension, which is precisely why Rivera's perspective is so valuable. He brings knowledge no business school graduate or management consultant could provide. Her gaze swept the room, challenging anyone to disagree. "The proposal is approved. Implementation begins next quarter." The meeting moved on to other topics, but Marcus remained acutely aware of what had just transpired. Katherine had defended him, affirmed his value to the company in front of her entire executive team. Yet in doing so, she had also exercised her power, making a unilateral decision without the usual debate and consensus building that characterized these meetings. Had she done him a favor, or had she undermined his credibility by suggesting he needed her protection? After the meeting, as executives filed out of the conference room, Katherine motioned for Marcus to stay behind. "Your presentation was excellent," she said once they were alone. "Clear, data-driven, compelling." "Thank you," Marcus replied, gathering his materials, though I'm not sure everyone was convinced. "They will be when the results come in." Katherine studied him for a moment. "Did you register for classes?" The question caught him off guard. "Yes, 3 courses for spring semester." A smile of genuine pleasure transformed Katherine's face. "That's wonderful news, Marcus. I'm glad you made that choice." "It is my choice, isn't it?" The words came out more sharply than he intended. Katherine's smile faded. "Of course it is. Then why did it feel like you were making decisions for me in there?" Marcus gestured toward the conference table, approving my proposal without discussion, defending me before I could defend myself. Katherine's expression closed, the familiar mask of professional detachment sliding back into place. "I was supporting your initiative. Is that a problem?" "It is when it comes across as charity." Marcus met her gaze directly. "I don't want special treatment, Katherine. I want to succeed or fail on my own merits." The use of her first name, a boundary he had never crossed before, hung between them, altering the dynamic of their conversation. "This isn't charity, Marcus," Katherine said. her voice controlled but with an undercurrent of something like hurt. "This is business. Your proposal is sound. It will save the company millions. My job is to recognize good ideas and implement them efficiently. And the fact that it came from the former janitor had nothing to do with your decision? The fact that it came from someone with unique insights into our building systems had everything to do with my decision." Catherine's eyes flashed. "If you're suggesting I approved your proposal because I feel sorry for you, or because I'm trying to some point about upward mobility, then you've severely misunderstood my character and my priorities as CEO." Marcus felt the conversation slipping away from him, his valid concern about autonomy morphing into an accusation he hadn't intended to make. "I apologize," he said finally. "I'm still adjusting to this new role, to being seen and heard after so many years of invisibility. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between support and special treatment." Catherine's expression softened slightly. "I understand that. But Marcus, you need to understand something as well. I didn't promote you to prove a point or to satisfy some philanthropic impulse. I did it because this company needed your knowledge, your perspective, your solutions. What happened in that meeting wasn't charity, it was recognition of the value you bring." The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable, and Marcus felt a flush of shame at his accusation. Had his pride, his sensitivity about his former position, caused him to misinterpret her actions? "I should get back to work," he said, unable to fully process the swirl of emotions her words had triggered. Katherine nodded, her professional demeanor reasserting itself. "Of course, we both have busy days ahead." As Marcus walked back to his office, he reflected on the complexity of their relationship. Katherine had given him an opportunity that had transformed his life, yet he resented any suggestion that he couldn't stand on his own. She had recognized his value when others overlooked him, yet he questioned her motives when she supported his ideas. The contradictions troubled him. Was he being ungrateful? Or was he simply asserting the dignity and independence he had maintained throughout his years as a janitor? There were no easy answers, but one thing was becoming increasingly clear: his relationship with Katherine Langford was evolving into something neither of them had anticipated when she first found him cleaning her office in the late hours of a November evening. The City University campus hummed with evening activity as Marcus walked toward the engineering building. Students half his age moved purposefully along lamplit paths, backpacks slung over shoulders, conversations flowing around him like water. He clutched his new laptop, a purchase that had felt both extravagant and necessary, and tried to ignore the flutter of anxiety in his stomach. This was his third week of classes. The initial strangeness of being back in a classroom had begun to fade, replaced by a different kind of challenge: the rigorous demands of the coursework. Engineering mathematics required mental muscles Marcus hadn't used in decades. Introduction to mechanical engineering presented concepts he had intuited through experience, but now had to formalize through theory and calculation. He was older than most of the professors, let alone the students, yet no one seemed to find his presence remarkable. In a university serving a diverse urban population, the middle-aged man in the back row taking careful notes was just another student pursuing his dreams on a non-traditional timeline. As he settled into his seat for engineering mathematics, Marcus checked his phone. A text from Elena glowed on the screen. "Crush that calculus, Dad." His daughter's unwavering support had become his anchor as he navigated this new chapter of his life. Professor Watts, a brisk woman in her 60s with cropped silver hair, began the lecture on differential equations. Marcus leaned forward, his attention absolute. In this classroom, the hierarchies of Langford Industries didn't exist. He wasn't the former janitor promoted beyond his station, or the executive with something to prove. He was simply a student, judged solely on his ability to understand and apply the concepts before him. There was freedom in that simplicity. A clean equation. Input equals output. Effort equals result. After class, as Marcus packed up his materials, Professor Watts approached his desk. "Mia Rivera," she said, holding out his most recent assignment. "A moment?" Marcus felt a flicker of concern. The problem sets had been challenged, and he'd spent hours wrestling with concepts that the younger students seemed to grasp intuitively. "Your work shows unusual insight," Professor Watts said, indicating his solutions. "You've approached these problems differently than most first-year students. More pragmatic. Is that a problem?" Marcus asked her. "On the contrary, it's refreshing." She studied him with keen eyes. "You've worked in industry before?" "Building maintenance and systems management. I'm currently assistant director of building systems at Langford Industries." Professor Watts nodded. "That explains it. You're applying theory to real-world experience, not the other way around like most students." She handed him his graded work. "A minus. Keep it up." The validation sent a warm current of pride through Marcus as he made his way across campus to his next class. His practical experience wasn't a disadvantage here, it was an asset. A unique lens through which to view the theoretical frameworks of engineering. Back at Langford Industries the following day, Marcus's dual identity continued to evolve. His team had fully embraced his leadership, the initial skepticism replaced by genuine respect for his knowledge and fair-minded approach. The integrated systems management plan was proving successful, generating efficiencies that attracted positive attention from the board. Yet Marcus still felt the subtle weight of his history within the company. When he entered the executive dining room, conversations sometimes paused momentarily. When he spoke in leadership meetings, certain certain executives still registered surprise at his insights, as if they couldn't quite reconcile his current role with their memory of him pushing a cleaning cart through the hallways. And then there was Katherine. Since their confrontation after the staff meeting, their interactions had been cordial but distant. The brief window of personal connection they had shared at the retreat seemed to have closed, replaced by a careful professionalism that neither acknowledged nor denied the complexity of their relationship, until the day the West Wing renovation hit a critical problem. Marcus was in his office reviewing contractor bids when Catherine's assistant appeared at his door. "Ms. Langford requests your immediate presence in the West Wing, Miss Rivera. There's been an incident." Marcus found Katherine standing in the half-demolished executive conference room, surrounded by contractors, architects, and a very nervous-looking project. Dust filled the air, and exposed wiring hung from the ceiling where workers had removed sections of drywall. "Mr. Rivera," Katherine said, her voice carrying the crisp authority he had come to associate with crisis management. "We have a situation." The project manager stepped forward. "We were removing the old wall panels when we discovered this." He pointed to a section of exposed infrastructure behind the demolished wall. Marcus moved closer, immediately recognizing the problem. Behind the wall, ancient plumbing lines ran directly adjacent to critical electrical conduits, a serious code violation and potential hazard that had somehow been overlooked in the original building plan. "How bad?" Katherine asked, watching Marcus's expression. "Bad," he confirmed. "This entire section needs to be completely rewired and replumbed before construction can continue. And given its location, it's on the critical path for the renovation timeline." The project manager finished, his face pale. "We're looking at a minimum 8-week delay. The board presentation is scheduled for—" "I know when the board presentation is scheduled," Katherine cut in, her tone sharp. The board had approved the renovation with the explicit understanding that it would be completed before their quarterly meeting, where Katherine planned to unveil the modernized West Wing as evidence of Langford Industries' commitment to innovation and sustainability. She turned to Marcus. "Options?" Everyone in the room watched as Marcus examined the exposed infrastructure more closely. Years of maintenance work had given him an intimate knowledge of the building's systems, including its quirks, modifications, and hidden pathways. "There's a service channel behind the north wall," he said finally, "installed during the 1992 upgrade but never documented in the official plans. If we reroute through there, we can isolate the electrical from the plumbing without demolishing the entire section." He traced a path with his finger. "It would require precision work, but it could save at least 6 weeks on the timeline." The architects and contractors exchanged skeptical glances. "How can you be sure this service channel exists?" one of the architects asked. "It's not in any of the blueprints." "Because I've used it," Marcus replied simply. "There's an access panel in the maintenance closet on the north side. I've run communication cables through it at least a dozen times over the years." Katherine didn't hesitate. "Show them." Marcus led the group to the maintenance closet, a small utilitarian space the renovation team had been using for storage. He moved aside some equipment, revealing a nondescript panel on the back wall. "The building plans show this as a solid structural wall," the lead architect said, consulting his tablet. Marcus removed the panel, exposing a narrow channel running the length of the wall exactly as he had described. The contractors and architects moved closer, their skepticism giving way to grudging respect as they examined the space. "This could work," the lead contractor admitted. "We'd need to bring in some specialized equipment and it would be tight." But single quotes. As the technical discussion continued, Marcus became aware of Katherine watching him, a peculiar expression on her face, not quite a smile, but something softer than her usual professional mask. When the team dispersed to revise their plans, Katherine stayed behind. For a moment they stood alone in the small maintenance closet, surrounded by the tools and equipment of the job Marcus had performed for most of his adult life. "You just saved this project," Katherine said quietly. Marcus shrugged. "I just knew where to look. This building has a lot of secrets. As do you, apparently." There was a warmth in her voice he hadn't heard since the sunrise at Lake Geneva. "Engineering mathematics going well?" The personal question surprised him. "It is challenging, but good." Katherine nodded, seemingly pleased. "I never doubted you'd excel." She glanced around the small closet. "It's strange, isn't it? How much of this building's history lives in spaces most people never see, like these service channels hidden behind walls but essential to everything functioning properly." Marcus understood she wasn't just talking about the building. Some things are more visible than others. Doesn't make them more valuable. "No," Katherine agreed, meeting his eyes. "It doesn't." Something shifted between them in that moment, a return to the genuine connection they had glimpsed at the retreat, but deepened now by the weeks of professional collaboration and mutual respect that had followed. "I've missed our conversations," Katherine admitted, the words clearly difficult for someone accustomed to maintaining professional distance. "So have I," Marcus replied, surprised by his own honesty. Katherine seemed about to say more when her phone buzzed. She checked it, her expression immediately reverting to its professional efficiency. "Board call. I have to take this." She paused at the door of the closet. "Thank you, Marcus." for seeing what the rest of us missed. As she walked away, Marcus remained in the small maintenance closet, surrounded by the familiar tools of his former trade. He ran his hand along the exposed service channel, a hidden pathway he had discovered years ago, when no one was watching or caring what a janitor might find. Now that discovery had saved a multi-million-dollar project and quite possibly Katherine's standing with the board. The symmetry wasn't lost on him. The invisible man whose knowledge had suddenly become invaluable, the overlooked spaces that had suddenly become critical. He wondered if Katherine saw it too, how the very circumstances that had kept him invisible for so long were now the source of his unique value to the company and to her. Spring blossomed into early summer, bringing with it the close of Marcus's first semester at City University. His final grades, 2 A-minuses and an A, filled him with a quiet pride he hadn't felt in decades. The challenge of balancing full-time work with evening classes had been immense, but the satisfaction of mastering complex concepts, of reclaiming a dream he had abandoned so long ago, made every late night worth it. At Langford Industries, Marcus's innovative solutions for the West Wing renovation had earned him recognition beyond the executive floor. The board of directors had specifically mentioned his contribution in their quarterly meeting, and his integrated systems management approach was being implemented in Langford facilities nationwide. His relationship with Katherine had settled into a rhythm of mutual respect and professional collaboration. Their brief moment of personal connection in the maintenance closet had opened a door, but neither had stepped fully through it. Instead, they maintained a careful balance, warmer than mere colleagues, yet still bound by the professional hierarchies that defined Langford Industries, until the Denver incident changed everything. The new Denver facility, Langford's flagship sustainable building project, was 2 weeks from its grand opening when the first reports of system failures began to surface. HVAC malfunctions, electrical irregularities, security systems going offline without warning. Katherine called an emergency meeting of the executive team. Marcus arrived to find the conference room tense with barely suppressed panic. "The situation is critical," Katherine stated, her voice controlled but her eyes betraying her concern. "We have millions invested in this facility. The press is already lined up for the ribbon cutting. Any delay would be catastrophic for our stock price and our reputation as an innovation." The chief technology officer presented the technical assessment. "The building management system is experiencing cascade failures. Our engineers on site can't pinpoint the root cause. They've never seen anything like it." "What about the system vendor?" the coup asked. "Blaming our specifications," the CTO replied. "They're saying we demanded incompatible integrations." All eyes turned to Marcus, whose integrated systems approach had been a cornerstone of the Denver project. "Rivera, is this on you?" the CFO asked bluntly. Before Marcus could respond, Katherine intervened. "The integrated approach was approved by this entire team after thorough review. Let's focus on solutions, not blame." Marcus appreciated her defense but didn't need it. He had spent the previous night reviewing every specification and system diagram for the Denver facility. "The problem isn't the integration concept," he said confidently. "It's the execution. The vendor used proprietary protocols instead of open standards, creating compatibility issues at the system boundaries." He pulled up detailed schematics on the conference room display. "I've identified 7 critical interface points where communication is breaking down," the CTO frowned. "Our on-site team didn't catch this." "They wouldn't," Marcus explained. "These failures only become apparent under specific load conditions. The system worked fine during testing, but now that all systems are fully operational, the weaknesses are showing." "Can it be fixed?" Katherine asked, cutting to the heart of the matter. Marcus nodded. "Yes, but not remotely. Someone needs to go to Denver, reconfigure the interface protocols, and implement bypass routines at the critical junctions." "How long?" 3 days of intensive work. "If successful, we could still make the opening." Katherine didn't hesitate. "You'll fly out today. Take whatever resources and personnel you need." The CFO cleared his throat. "Shouldn't we send the CTO's team? They have more experience with..." "They missed this in the first place," Katherine interrupted. "Marcus identified the problem in one night from 2,000 miles away. He goes." Her tone left no room for argument. 3 hours later, Marcus was on the company jet, accompanied by 2 senior engineers he had handpicked for their expertise in system integration. As the plane climbed to cruising altitude, he reviewed his plans one more time, methodically checking each potential solution against the complex problems waiting in Denver. His phone buzzed with a text from Katherine. "You've got this. Call if you need anything. Anything at all." The simple message carried a weight of trust that steadied him. Katherine wasn't just sending him to fix a technical problem. She was entrusting him with the company's reputation, its financial health, and by extension, her own standing with the board. It was a vote of confidence that transcended professional courtesy. Denver greeted them with clear skies and a mountain backdrop that momentarily distracted Marcus from the crisis at hand. The Langford facility stood on the outskirts of the city, a gleaming testament to sustainable architecture with its solar arrays, living walls, and innovative use of space. Inside, however, chaos reigned. Local engineers, vendor representatives, and increasingly frustrated Langford executives crowded the main control room, their voices rising in a cacophony of technical jargon and blame shifting. Marcus Marcus's arrival initially drew skeptical glances. Who was this newcomer and why had headquarters sent him instead of more senior technical leadership? But as Marcus calmly took control, explaining his diagnosis and outlining a clear path forward, the skepticism gave way to cautious hope. He assigned specific tasks to each team, established a communication protocol, and set up a war room for coordinating the complex repair operation. For the next 72 hours, Marcus barely slept. He moved through the building's systems like a surgeon, identifying precisely where the integration was failing and implementing his carefully designed solutions. His practical experience as a maintenance worker gave him insights the formally trained engineers misstand, understanding of how systems behaved in real-world conditions, not just on paper. By the third day, the building was stabilizing. Systems came back online one by one, interfaces began communicating properly, and the cascade failures subsided. Marcus stood in the control room watching as the final diagnostics ran, all indicators glowing a reassuring green. His phone rang. "Katherine, we just got the system status report," she said without preamble. "The board is ecstatic. You've pulled off a miracle, Marcus." He smiled tiredly. "Not a miracle, just good engineering and a lot of caffeine. The opening can proceed as scheduled," her voice soft. "Come home tomorrow. The company jet will be waiting." As Marcus hung up, he felt a complex emotion wash over him. Pride in his accomplishment, gratitude for Katherine's trust, and a growing awareness that his life had transformed in ways he could never have imagined a year ago. That night, as the Denver team celebrated their success, Marcus stepped outside onto the facility's roof garden. The city lights spread before him, a mirror to the star-filled sky above. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from cleaning offices to saving multi-million-dollar projects, from deferring dreams to pursuing them with renewed passion. And he thought about Katherine Langford, the woman who had seen something in him that he had almost forgotten existed. His phone buzzed with a text. "Safe travels tomorrow. We need to talk when you're back." The message carried a weight of unspoken meaning that both intrigued and unsettled him. The return flight to New York was peaceful, the crisis behind them, the Denver facility functioning perfectly in time for its grand opening. Marcus dozed in the comfortable leather seat of the company jet, exhaustion finally claiming him after the intensity of the past 3 days. He arrived at Langford Industries late that afternoon to find the office buzzing with news of the Denver success. Colleagues who had once walked past him without a glance now stopped to shake his hand, to congratulate him, to acknowledge his critical role in averting disaster. Katherine's assistant met him as he stepped off the elevator. "Miss Langford would like to see you immediately." Marcus followed her to Katherine's office, conscious of his rumpled clothes and the stubble on his chin after 3 days of minimal self-care. Katherine stood at the window, looking out at the city, her posture straight and composed as always. But when she turned to face him, he saw something different in her eyes, a vulnerability, a decision reached after long deliberation. "Marcus," she said simply, "thank you for what you did in Denver." "I was just doing my job," he replied. "No," Katherine shook her head. "You went far beyond your job description. You saved a project many thought was unsalvageable." She moved away from the window, closing the distance between them. "The board has taken notice. They've authorized a special compensation package and a promotion to full director level." Marcus absorbed this news with mixed emotions. Another promotion so soon after the last. Another step up the corporate ladder he had never expected to climb. "That's generous," he said carefully. "It's earned," Katherine corrected him. "But that's not why I wanted to see you." She hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. "There's something I need to tell you. Something personal." The shift in tone caught Marcus off guard. In all their interactions, Katherine had maintained clear professional boundaries, even during those rare moments when something more personal had flickered between them. "My brother," she continued, "the one I mentioned when we first really spoke, he's not doing well. The experimental treatment failed completely." Her voice remained steady, but Marcus could see the cost of that control. "The doctors give him weeks, maybe days." "Katherine, I'm so sorry," Marcus said, the formal barriers between them temporarily forgotten in the face of her pain. She nodded, accepting his sympathy. "I'll be taking a leave of absence, effective immediately. The board has appointed David Chun as interim CEO." Marcus was stunned. Katherine Langford stepping away from the company she had shaped with such single-minded dedication was unprecedented. "How long will you be gone?" he asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "As long as Kella needs me. As long as ... single quotes." She didn't finish the thought, but she didn't need to. They both understood what was coming. "Before I go," Katherine said, her gaze direct and unwavering, "I wanted to thank you, not just for Denver, but for everything you've taught me these past months." "What could I possibly have taught you?" Marcus asked, genuinely puzzled. A sad smile touched Katherine's lips. "That success isn't measured by titles or stock options. That dignity comes from within, not from external validation. That seeing people truly seeing them is perhaps the most important skill a leader can possess." She took a deep breath. "Lessons I wish I'd learned long ago." The raw honesty in her voice moved something deep within Marcus. This wasn't the untouchable CEO speaking, but a woman facing profound loss, acknowledging regrets, reaching for human connection in a moment of vulnerability. "When do you leave?" he asked softly. "Tonight. The company plane is being prepared." The same plane that had just brought him home was now taking her away. their paths crossing but not quite connecting. The symmetry struck Marcus as both beautiful and painful. Standing in Katherine's office, watching her prepare to leave, Marcus felt the weight of unspoken words between them. Their relationship had evolved through so many iterations: CEO and janitor, mentor and protege, colleagues, and something approaching friends. Yet there remained a distance neither had fully bridged. "I wish there was something I could do," Marcus said finally. Katherine paused in gathering her documents. "There is. Actually." She handed him a folder. "The board wants you to oversee the implementation of your integrated systems approach across all Langford facilities. It's a global initiative now." Marcus took the folder, surprised. "That's a significant expansion of my responsibilities." "It is," Katherine agreed, "but there's no one better qualified. The project needs someone who understands both the theory and the practice, who can speak to executives and maintenance workers with equal authority." She met his eyes. "It needs you, Marcus." The trust inherent in this assignment wasn't lost on him. Katherine was entrusting him with a cornerstone of Langford's operational strategy while she faced the most difficult personal challenge of her life. "I'll do my best," he promised. Katherine nodded, then reached into her desk drawer and withdrew a small wrapped package. "This is for you. Consider it a graduation gift, a bit early." Marcus hesitated before accepting it. "I haven't graduated yet. I've barely completed one semester." "But you will graduate," Katherine said with certainty, "and I want you to have this now." Marcus unwrapped the package to find a sleek silver pen in a presentation case. Engraved along its length were the words Marcus Rivera, Engineer of Hidden Pathways. The thoughtfulness of the gift, acknowledging both his future degree and his unique contribution to Langford, left him momentarily speechless. "Thank you," he said finally, the simple words inadequate for the complex emotion behind. Katherine's assistant appeared at the door. "The car is ready, Ms. Langford." Katherine nodded, then turned back to Marcus. "I should go." Katherine, Marcus began, then hesitated, uncertain what he wanted to say. She waited, her eyes questioned. "I hope ... single quotes," he started again. "I hope your brother finds peace, and that you do too." Katherine's professional composure slipped just for a moment, revealing the depth of her pain and gratitude. "Thank you, Marcus." She picked up her briefcase. "I'll be in touch when I can." Then she was gone, leaving Marcus alone in the office that embodied her power and isolation. He looked down at the pen in his hand, running his thumb over the engraved words. Engineer of Hidden Pathways, was perhaps the most accurate description of his life's work, finding through obstacle, connecting disparate systems, making the invisible essential. In the weeks that followed Katherine's departure, Marcus immersed himself in work. The Global Systems Integration Project demanded all his technical knowledge and leadership skills. He traveled to Langford facilities across the country, training teams, solving integration problems, building a network of professionals who shared his vision of unified, efficient building management. Between trips, he continued his studies at City University, diving deeper into the theoretical frameworks that explained the practical knowledge he had accumulated over decades. His professors increasingly sought his input, recognizing the value of his real-world experience. Elena visited one weekend, and they celebrated her completion of her accounting degree over dinner at a restaurant, nicer than any Marcus would have considered entering a year ago. "Dad, I'm so proud of you," she said, raising her glass. "Look at everything you've accomplished." Marcus smiled at his daughter, the source of his greatest pride and purpose. "I had a good example. You never gave up on your education, even when it would have been easier to." "Like father, like daughter," Elena replied with a grin. "Speaking of which, have you heard from Katherine?" Marcus shook his head. "Not directly. The board gets weekly updates on her status, but they're brief. Her brother's condition hasn't improved." "You miss her," Elena observed. It wasn't a question, and Marcus didn't treat it as one. "The company is different without her. Less focused." "That's not what I asked." Marcus considered his daughter's perceptive gaze. When had she become so adept at reading him? "Yes," he admitted. "I miss her. Our conversations, her clarity of purpose." "Just conversations," Elena pressed gently. Marcus gave her a warning look. "That's all it could ever be, Elena. The CEO and the former janitor? That's the plot of a romantic comedy, not real life." "Former janitor, current director of Global Systems Integration, future engineer," Elena corrected him. "And she's not just the CEO, she's Katherine, a person who saw you when no one else did." Marcus had no response to that. His daughter had distilled something essential about his relationship with Katherine that he had been reluctant to acknowledge. Summer faded into fall, and still Katherine remained absent. Marcus heard through company channels that her brother had rallied briefly before declining again, extending her leave of absence indefinitely. The board was growing restless, but Katherine's substantial ownership stake in Langford Industries protected her position. Marcus continued to expand the integrated systems program, earning recognition within the industry as an innovative thinker at the intersection of practical, maintenance, and theoretical engineering. An article in a leading trade journal profiled his unusual career path, highlighting how his decades of hands-on experience informed his approach to systems management. When the fall semester ended, Marcus found himself at the top of his class. His understanding of engineering principles deepened by daily application in his work at Langford. The dual tracks of his life, academic and professional, were no longer in conflict but in harmony, each enriching the other. Clear December morning, when Marcus's assistant informed him that Katherine had returned to the building and wanted to see him. Heart racing unexpectedly, Marcus made his way to the executive floor. Katherine stood at the window of her office, looking out at the city. When she turned to greet him, Marcus was struck by the changes in her. She was thinner, new lines etched around her eyes and mouth, but there was something else different about her, a softness that hadn't been there before, a humanity more visible beneath the executive veneer. "Marcus," she said, a genuine smile warming her face. "It's good to see you. Welcome back," he replied. "I'm sorry about your brother." Katherine nodded, accepting his condolence. "Kellen passed 3 weeks ago, peacefully in the end." She gestured for him to sit. "I've been following your work while I was away. The global integration program is exceeding all projections. The teams have embraced it," Marcus acknowledged. "Once they see the results, resistance fades quickly. The board is impressed. They're talking about creating a new C-level position, Chief Infrastructure Officer. They want you for it." Marcus stared at her, momentarily speechless. "That's ... Not a position I ever imagined existing, let alone holding." "That's because you're creating something new, Marcus. A whole new approach to building management that could transform the industry." Catherine's eyes held his. "But before you make any decisions, there's something you should know." She stood and walked to the window again, gathering her thoughts. "Being with Kellen these past months, watching him fade ... It changed, made me reevaluate everything." She turned to face him. "I'm stepping down as CEO." Marcus couldn't hide his shock. "What?" "Why? Because Langford Industries has consumed my life for too long. Because I've sacrificed personal connections for professional advancement. Because I want more than this office and this title." Her gaze was direct, unflinching. "The board has already approved my decision. David Chun will succeed me." Marcus absorbed this news, trying to understand its implications. "What will you do?" "I'm establishing a foundation in Kellen's name focused on sustainable building practices in underserved communities. And I'm going back to school." A smile touched her lips. "Seems I was inspired by someone." The parallels weren't lost on Marcus. Katherine following his example as he had once followed hers. The symmetry felt right somehow, a balancing of the scales between them. "I have a proposition for you," Katherine continued. "The foundation needs a technical director, someone who understands both the engineering and the human elements of sustainable building. It would mean leaving Langford, turning down the C-suite position." She paused. "I'd understand if you're not interested." Marcus considered the offer. The C-level position at Langford represented the culmination of an unexpected journey, a validation of his worth in the corporate world that had overlooked him for decades. Catherine's foundation was an unknown, a risk, a new beginning. "Why me?" he asked finally, echoing the question he had posed months ago when she first suggested he apply for the assistant director position. "Because you see what others miss," Katherine answered simply. "Because you understand that buildings are for people, not the other way around. Because you know that true sustainability isn't just about energy efficiency, but about human dignity." Marcus studied her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes, the hope that he might join her in this new venture. No longer was she the untouchable CEO offering charity to a janitor. Now she was a woman asking a colleague, perhaps a friend, to partner with her in creating something meaningful. "What would my title be?" he asked. "Whatever you want. Co-director? Chief engineer? It doesn't matter to me." Marcus nodded slowly. "I have one condition." "Name it." "I want to finish my degree first." He smiled. "I've come too far to stop now." Catherine's face brightened with genuine pleasure. "Of course, the foundation won't be operational for at least 6 months. Perfect timing for your graduation." As they discussed details of the foundation, Marcus felt a sense of rightness settle over him. This wasn't charity, this was partnership. Two people who had traveled unlikely paths to find themselves standing on equal ground, seeing each other clearly at last. When he left Catherine's office that day, Marcus paused to look back. She stood at the window again, silhouetted against the winter sky. No longer the glacier, but a woman transformed by loss and rediscovery. "See you soon, Katherine," he said softly. She turned, caught his gaze, and smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes and warmed something long dormant in his heart. "I'm counting on it, Marcus."